If you can't handle the heat, stay out of the kitchen and the courtroom. These celeb chefs didn't follow that advice, as they've been accused of wage theft, discrimination, and worse. If you've ever watched Food Network, then you're probably familiar with Geoffrey Zakarian, who's popped up on the likes of Chopped, The Next Iron Chef, and The Kitchen. In 2011, more than 150 employees who worked at his restaurant Country, which closed in 2008, sued him for $1,250,000. They claimed that the restaurant did not pay proper overtime and had falsified records and paycheck deductions. Employees reported that when they brought up their concerns, they were met with an indifferent Zakarian and crying bookkeepers who knew about the fraud. In response to the claims, Zakarian filed for bankruptcy while still denying any wrongdoing despite some of his ex-partners backing the former employees. This isn't Zakarian's only legal trouble, as he was also involved in lawsuits with his Country partners. And in 2015, Donald Trump sued him for not honoring a contract to open a restaurant in one of Trump's hotels. Mario Batali was an absolute star in the culinary world in the 2000s and early 2010s, but then it all fell apart in 2017 when he was accused of sexual assault and harassment. Afterwards, he quickly disappeared from the spotlight, even though the New York Police Department decided not to pursue investigations due to insufficient evidence. In 2019, Batali was accused of a separate incident of sexual misconduct and found not guilty.
His conduct and his appearance and his demeanor were not befitting of a public person.
Before all that, Batali was actually embroiled in another legal battle. In 2012, he agreed to a $5 million+ settlement after servers claimed that he violated labor laws by stealing tips. The lawsuit claimed that the bad behavior went back nearly a decade and impacted more than 1,000 employees. The suit also claimed that it was a common practice for Batali's restaurants to deduct a percentage of servers' tips to supposedly cover necessary expenses. David Burke may not be the most famous celebrity chef around, but he's certainly one of the busiest, with more than a dozen restaurants, appearances on a range of TV shows, and even a few patents. His legal record isn't too bad either, though he does have a lawsuit in his past. In 2014, a group of 50 employees filed a discrimination lawsuit against Burke, claiming that management discriminated against Muslim employees at 4 of his restaurants. One of the employees noted that he'd informed management that he couldn't work on Fridays due to prayer services. They were initially agreeable, but that quickly changed. The employee began taking breaks to attend his services during Friday shifts until management ordered him to stop. After the employee complained, management terminated his position. In August 2012, the Chicago Tribune declared, "Graham Elliot is hot." Indeed, Elliot had just won numerous honors, helmed 3 restaurants in the Windy City, and appeared on such shows as Master Chef. But legal trouble was looming. In March of that same year, a group of 14 employees filed a lawsuit against Elliot, stating that there was a scheme at his restaurant to avoid paying employees both regular and overtime wages. The restaurant also allegedly illegally forced tip sharing between waitstaff and other employees. The employees asked for back pay with interest. The suit was ultimately settled that September. Despite that hiccup, Elliot went on to serve as a judge on MasterChef Junior and Top Chef, opened a new restaurant in Asia in 2018, and served as the culinary director for Lollapalooza, among other career highlights. In 2009, Food Network star Anne Burrell was sued by employees of Centro Vinoteca in New York City's West Village. The suit claimed that Burrell was discriminatory and verbally abusive toward the women on her staff by making lewd and offensive comments towards them on a regular basis. The employees also claimed that when they complained about this behavior, they were fired. The case was ultimately settled. But by the time that Burrell was accused, she had already left the restaurant and embarked on her Food Network career. And this incident hardly hurt her upward trajectory, as she's gone on to appear on some of the network's most notable programs.
I actually spring out of bed in the morning.
In March 2018, a former manager employed by Mike Isabella filed a sexual harassment lawsuit requesting back pay and damage for pain and suffering caused by Isabella's sexual advances, comments, verbal abuse, and other incidents. The former manager was fired after Isabella suggested that she engage in intercourse with another chef, and she then walked out of the restaurant. At the time, Isabella owned multiple restaurants in Washington, D.C., and was known for his Top Chef appearances. In the fallout of the lawsuit, restaurants closed and more details regarding Isabella's behavior were revealed, including frequent bouts of drunkenness at his restaurants. His parent company ended up filing for bankruptcy that year. Then, in another lawsuit in 2020, employees accused Isabella of still owing them wages from years ago. At that time, he had made his way to Florida and was trying to establish himself in the Sarasota area. Chris Santos is a frequent judge on Chopped and yet another chef who has been sued for wage theft. In 2019, bussers at Santos' New York City restaurant Beauty and Essex claimed that they weren't paid for overtime hours and that they weren't paid minimum wage. Instead, they were paid similarly to servers, with the expectation that tips would make up the bulk of their pay, even though bussers don't spend much time or any time on tipped work. Furthermore, employees claimed that their paychecks subtracted money from meals that they supposedly ate, and that bussers didn't receive their legally required shift breaks. Unlike many other celebrity chef scandals, this one didn't really make headlines, and Santos' career wasn't impacted too much as news coverage remained minimal. As of 2023, Beauty and Essex is still operational, with a sister restaurant in Las Vegas. Gordon Ramsay is infamous for his brash personality on shows like Hell's Kitchen, although he's never been sued for verbally abusing his employees. However, he has still been involved in his fair share of legal battles. In 2000, he settled a breach of contract case brought against him by his former employers. Then in 2006, he won a libel case against a newspaper. And in 2012, he sued partners at a Montreal restaurant for defamation. But in 2013, Ramsay was the defendant when employees at his Los Angeles-based restaurant, The Fat Cow, sued for unpaid wages and labor law violations. Claims included allegations that employees weren't always paid minimum wage, didn't receive shift breaks as required by law, and didn't receive overtime pay. One former employee did tell ABC News that she wasn't sure Ramsay was to blame for the issues, as it was possible that the violations were occurring without his knowledge.
You should be able to, go to the bathroom when you need to go to the bathroom.
Right.
You might not know Lidia Bastianich's name, but perhaps you've heard one of the businesses she helped launch, Italy. Her legal story is one of the oddest you'll come across, with complaints that go far beyond the likes of wage theft and harassment. In 2011, an Italian woman filed a $5 million lawsuit that claimed Bastianich's associate brought her to the United States from Italy with the promise of a lucrative job. Instead, when the woman, who spoke little English and had no resources, moved to New York, she was forced to work in a domestic care role. This consisted of taking care of the 99-year-old wife of one of Bastianich's former employees who had sold his home to Bastianich under the agreement that she would provide care for his wife. After the woman died, Bastianich allegedly attempted to force the employee to return to Italy by offering her a one-way ticket to Venice and $10,000. The complaint was ultimately dismissed. In 2016, Seattle-based chef Josh Henderson eliminated tipping from his restaurants, which on the surface seemed like a decent idea. Restaurants took the burden of gratuity away from diners and instead implemented a 20% service charge across the board that would fund wages and benefits. But employees felt that the service charge was still technically a tip, and that as a tip, it all should have been given to the workers and not allocated as management saw fit. By 2018, Henderson had a lawsuit on his hands, with employees saying that because not all of that service charge ended up in their pockets, the change qualified as wage theft. Henderson settled with the employees for $1 million, but not before he had to sell off 9 of his restaurants to other chefs in the Seattle area. Acclaimed restaurateur and Top Chef judge Tom Colicchio has faced numerous lawsuits over the course of his career. In 2008, an employee sued, claiming that Colicchio didn't pay workers everything they were due, including overtime, tips, and minimum wage. The employee worked at Colicchio's Craft Bar, which closed in 2017 due to an increase in rent. And in 2021, a group of employees sued Colicchio for similar reasons. They were all delivery drivers for his Witchcraft sandwich shops in New York City between 2005 and 2016. They claimed that the business paid less than minimum wage, withheld breaks, and didn't cover job costs such as bicycle maintenance. The case was settled for $180,000. And it's not just former employees who have accused Colicchio. In 2017, a man attempted and failed to sue a group of restaurateurs, including Colicchio, by claiming that by eliminating standard tipping practices, they were conspiring to raise the cost of food for higher profits.
This isn't a yes or no, that's the problem.
Right, exactly.
Danielle Boulud has quite the sterling culinary reputation, but in 2014, servers filed a suit claiming that they didn't receive proper compensation for work that went above and beyond the tip-reliant labor that allows restaurants to pay servers less than minimum wage. They asked for millions of dollars to cover lost wages from the previous 6 years. And this wasn't Boulud's only costly legal trouble. In addition to a second wage theft suit that was settled in 2014, he was also fined $1.3 million by a jury in 2016 when a diner at one of his restaurants consumed a metal wire from a metal cleaning brush and then almost died from the resulting infection. Even if you don't know the name Thomas Keller, chances are you've heard of his restaurant, the French Laundry. But in 2016, the famed eatery in Napa Valley was at the center of a discrimination lawsuit. A woman who worked at Keller's Manhattan restaurant, Per Se, claimed that she was offered the option to transfer to the French Laundry. She then made all the necessary arrangements to move and did so, only to arrive in Napa Valley and find that the position was no longer hers. The woman claimed that the change happened because her manager found out that she was pregnant and didn't want to provide maternity leave. She asked for $5 million as well as legal fees to cover the economic and emotional turmoil that resulted. Ultimately, Keller won the case as a jury cleared him of wrongdoing. It was determined that the former employee was let go for performance reasons rather than because of her pregnancy, and that her move to California was a matter of miscommunication.